Hot mic. There's a hot mic.
Hold on, I'm getting killed.
Who are you getting killed by?
I don't know. Let me just...
Do you think the Command Zone podcast has a thing where like Murph's just in the corner playing Switch and
I've definitely seen Josh like look to people before in the middle of the cards.
like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
It's like, I'm trying to get this last like vantage tower.
Huh?
Let me just remove myself.
How long
No,
before
you
the
can say
cake?
that.
How long before the cake? How long till cake?
23 minutes. Will the button clicking annoy people? Will it be...
Probably won't be picked up.
Yeah,
Okay.
hopefully not. I mean, I do this on the table all the time, and we keep that in.
Welcome to Magic the Flavouring, the Magic the Gathering podcast, where we talk about all things magic, flavour design, and lore. I'm your host, Andy Mann.
Hello, this is Nathan Cancel.
And, well, I mean, we're going to talk about the Duskmourn flavour picks, but it's sort of redundant because Magic the Gathering doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah, like no, Commander doesn't exist anymore. There's no format now that you can be happy with playing because every format is now going to be under the jurisdiction of a company that doesn't know how to run its own game.
Well, how can we talk... we're not going to talk about all that
No,
stuff.
because that was also massive hyperbole. I don't believe there's any of this anymore.
No, of course Magic's not ever, but, like, it feels really redundant us to be like, so, I really like this art.
Yeah, and meanwhile, everything is on fire.
on fire.
Yeah. I guess what's funny, right, is that I look at like modern players and how much they've been shouting about how over the last few years they've kind of like tried to reinvigorate the format, which then obviously requires them to then turn it into basically a rotation. It's okay. A rotational format similar to Standard, of where every time there's a new Modern Horizons set, it's gonna fuck the format up because it's really hard. And maybe this is just telling of like the way they've done FR. It's the fire mentality of design, right? Of where they're like, just make things busted and then regulate afterwards. It's like, cool. But then you've got this real ebb and flow. And we've felt it for the first time in Commander, which is normally casual, community-based. And suddenly they've gone, hey, over the last few years, we've heavily reprinted these like 2 or 3 cards. We're not counting Nardu in this conversation. But, cards that are specific to the format. And we've pushed them so far because of our fire design, which probably doesn't translate actually into Commander sets, but I think that mentality of making things that are exciting and then regulate later has led to them going, hey, let's reprint these crazy powerful cards that every player wants to play, but it's still expensive because we do alternate art versions of them, things like that. And then actually we realised that maybe we went too far and we're going to take them back, so good luck to your collection.
Yeah.
And that, I think, is the thing that's pissed people off. And then obviously off the back of that, people have been exceptionally inappropriate from a social point of view, and then it's caused the only floodgate to then be raised and gone, fine, we just give the format back to them then. Ever since Sheldon, like, God rest his soul, it does feel like there's been like, okay, that was the last thing holding back a lot of shit that then has now slowly but surely, I say slowly, it's come in chunks, right? There hasn't been it's not been a slow drip feed, it's been here's a deluge, here's the flood, and then I hope you were ready for it.
Yeah. There's lots of thoughts and feelings around this topic. It's funny us doing this episode now because I think I sort of alluded to it in our last episode. The controversy surrounding a lot of the decisions made for the aesthetic and design of Duskmourn for a lot of the cards I'm going to talk about. I thought this was going to be a bit of a controversial episode.
Yeah.
It's like,
Turns
actually,
out,
you know what? It's fine. It's fine.
I don't think we're going to get death threats over this, Andy. Let me put it that way.
Fucking hell.
Right?
It's just, ridiculous. By the way, if you were someone who threatened death or violence, or even got upset to the point of having a direct go at anyone who was involved, or as it turns out, not involved in the decision, go fuck yourself.
Yeah. Also, come at us because we'll be very much more willing to come back at you again. Okay. We're
got
not going to be
other
ambivalent and be like, oh, I'll just absorb. I mean,
Yeah, we don't have a format to
no,
this,
and I'm not going to fucking quit anything over this because I also don't think that's unjustified. But also, I've got just as much petty time as you have.
Yeah.
So let's go.
At least they weren't petty. We fuck it up.
Yeah.
So, we're talking Duskmourn flavour picks. Now, I've got a lot of very broad thoughts and feelings about this set, which I have to back up my thoughts, or to kind of not. I've got like individual cards. I mean, like, I think our flavour picks episodes are now starting to become, over the years, like our, how do you feel about this set broadly? Whereas, ironically, before maybe during COVID, they were very much like, no, we're going to be very specific to these cards.
Yeah. Well, we tried to
I've
do
broadened out. You've got a bit more specific.
Well, it's funny, right? Because normally, like the whole format typically for this kind of thing will be like a top 10, right, or a top 5 or whatever. You've got a few cards that come in that you're very specific to, and then hopefully from there the discussion kind of spreads further, which is kind of naturally how we found. Like we had a very strict structure with most of like our either flavour picks, story episode, generic random episodes about things. Like we've always kind of gone in hard on being structured to begin with, and then slowly loosened the format of the episode out. And I've kind of gone back to the original of like, I've got these 5 cards that I kind of want to talk about. A couple of them are like really, really, really simple things, but some of them from them will then do the reverse of yours of, instead of talking about general points and then focusing on one card, I want to talk about a card that then maybe then spreads out into a more generic conversation, because we're not doing like, it's not a story article, right? Or sorry, an online article of where we've got 10 fucking titles, 10 cards, and we go into depth about them. No, we're going to talk generally about the set, kind of similar to how we've started to do with story episodes, of where we kind of break it down as we're going, instead of going, here's all the information, here's an analysis. However, saying that, we're probably going to go through the mechanics a little bit more similarly to we have in past sets, of where we do go one by one through them, because I feel like that's at least how the set will feel most games that you play it, right? Based on the mechanics that are in there. We're not just talking aesthetics and stuff that either make or break a set from a fully complete kind of feeling of whether they feel like a well-formed set. We might talk also a little bit about how like there's maybe dissonance between the story and the cards and that kind of thing, but I think, yeah, we'll go through the mechanics, then we'll talk generalities, but with specific cards in mind that either highlight or expose that thought process.
I just think this is also a set, unlike, say, Bloomburrow or Outlaws of Thunder Junction or whatever. Like, those, we might have had quite big ideas about, like, oh, we like this set because it's this, or we didn't like this set because it didn't work because of that. Outlaws was maybe a bit more in depth than Bloomburrow. Bloomburrow we just liked it because it was back to fantasy.
It's pretty.
Right? Pretty. This is a set, I think, that is quite thematically divisive, and that does spill over not only into how the cards are designed and presented visually or like thematically, but also how they are from the play pattern, which is what we look at when we talk about the flavour of the card. I think there's a lot to talk about here.
I think there's two things for this set. There's the veneer and then there's the depth.
Yeah.
Right? And it's about what is the veneer and what is the depth. Because I think we talked about this in the story episode of the veneer wasn't really represented in the story, because the story went to massive depths. And I think once you peel past some of the pop references, which obviously Elephant in the Room we're going to have to talk about, when you get past that, when you actually delve down a little bit deeper into the actual nitty-gritty of the set, I think there's a fair amount to talk about. I'm not going to say whether it's good or bad yet, because we haven't got there yet, but I think there is nuance. And again, with most sets, it's very easy to go, we had an idea about a year and a half ago about, well, the whole set's just a horror house. And it's like, well, that sounds fucking stupid. And then we got a little bit further into it and goes, well, this is genius. And then we see some of the cards and you go, this is a bit on the nose. And then you actually get into the full set and you go, cool, maybe hyperbole isn't maybe hyperbole is the titling of reviews, but it shouldn't be the meat and bones of it.
Yeah. Few bits of admin to do with this set then, just in terms of we talk a lot about the lead art designers and the art direction. So it's Avido Tenga is the lead art director of this set. He is obviously a magic artist in his own right, and he's been part of the art direction team for quite a few sets, but his leads have been Phyrexia All-Be-One, Lord of the Rings, Tales of Middle-earth, Lost Caverns of Ixalan, and Duskmourn, House of Horror.
Which is a real spread. If you just stopped at All Will Be One and then this, I'm like, okay,
that makes sense.
So they pull him in specifically for the horror sets, but then also to go and do other sets like Lord of the Rings, which is soft setting. I mean, obviously, orcs and stuff, whatever, but like it's a high fantasy, soft color. It's an environment where we already know that you can't reinvent Lord of the Rings.
No,
because the narrative, the book, and then also the Jackson films. There's an expected view of what Lord of the Rings looks like, and if you didn't fit somewhat towards that, I think people would be like, well, this isn't my Lord of the Rings. Hence why people are annoyed about a black fucking Aragorn.
Yeah.
Imagine if they'd also changed how the entire world looked. People would be like, well, this isn't Lord of the Rings anymore. So you've got to fit within that remit. But it's funny that they've done sets like that, which has a very specific soft palette. All That We Won, which was super striking and harsh, which this is very much like as well. And the fact they can pull off both quite well. I mean, we never did a flavour pick or any real analysis of Tales of Lord of the Rings at all, which I think mostly is because it kind of just self-fulfilled itself.
Well, I'm a massive... I mean, I know you are as well, but I'm a huge die-hard Tolkien fan, and I think because I wasn't that interested in getting the cards because it wasn't necessarily how I wanted to engage with Lord of the Rings. Absolutely loved it for people who loved it. And actually, I mean, now there's a bit of distance away from it in terms of being released. I'm like, actually, I think it's a really quite successful and good way of doing that. I engage with Lord of the Rings through my reading. I don't necessarily need to engage with it.
Yeah, I feel like we probably could have done a super nitpick episode of where we go, none of these cards actually line up, and not from an attacking point of view, just from a looking at how Magic explains different IPs and whether or not it successfully did so or not with that. But I think from a visual point of view, I think it was hugely successful.
Yeah. The game designer, like the actual sort of what would you call it? Yeah, just design. They just call it design in these things, is Annie Sardellis, who has been around in Magic since Jumpstart and has had a hand in pretty much every set since then. Mark Rosewater, as ever, is obviously on this, as is Doug Bear. But you can tell that there's like a lot of big names in this design team, which you sort of think, okay, they really went for something.
Do you think that they were really nervous? That there are certain sets like Bloomburrow where they go, who isn't going to like this set?
Yeah.
And if you don't like the set, you're the weirdo. Whereas this is very much there's a bunch of people that probably wouldn't like. When you say the right words and you phrase it down into a little single synopsis, there's a lot of things that are very difficult to digest, I think, from this set. That they kind of had to go, maybe we need to put a little bit of extra effort in to make sure this carries. Maybe they even had a smaller team or a different team at the beginning. They went, okay, we need some extra support here to carry this set off.
Yeah, I just think there's a lot of big ideas. And there's a couple of mechanics which we'll talk about where you think they've yet again tried to reinvent a type of card in a way which hasn't been done before, or at least hasn't been done. Like it's when you have split cards. So I'm talking about rooms.
It's funny because I've literally got it in front of me. Because it's the top mechanic.
So we'll talk about it next. Then, we'll move straight onto that. But it's funny with split cards how they've now done split cards in so many different ways, having it be something that they were really cautious about when they first brought it about in, I guess, Ravnica.
Fire Ice, actually, years ago. We're talking maybe Odyssey.
Okay, but then that goes to show then they had a card, then they only did a little bit more in the Ravnica sets, and now it seems to be, it's like, how many different ways can we split a card in two? And they're now doing it. So I think if it was a good idea, like if it wasn't a good idea back then, why is it a good idea now? Like, that's got to be quite tricky with game design.
Yeah, I think also the progression of split cards, originally it was like alternate ideas, right? At the element fire and ice being very different from each other, and then I think Planar Chase had some as well. I'm trying to think of the one where it's Boom Bust. I think Boom Bust, of where it's 2 damage to non-creatures to non-flyers, or 6 damage to each flyer. Like they brought it back, and then I think they tried to do it obviously with Ravnica, going, well, this is if it was the card straddles between. Was it that they straddle between? No, it was that they would have a card for the Boros, and then one side would be the white, and then one side would be the red. Or something similar to that. That was
in Return to Ravnica, and I think OG, that was where you could cast both.
Oh, yeah.
Together.
Whereas the other one was two.
Either
was
or.
An Orzhov. It would be an Orzhov card and a Boros card.
Yeah.
Give Take, I think, is maybe one of them or something. No, that's Simic. Again,
and
there's too many.
And then in Guilds and Ravnica Allegiances, it would be like you could have either this Orzhov effect or this Orzhov effect. Like,
and I think
Revenge.
we did for the Return to Ravnica, they did the fuse, right, of where they went. So it was the two different sides of the Boros, but then you could have a red spell, a white spell, or a red-white spell. So it would give you either side and then both together.
Yeah.
So they've been trying to push this for a while, and that's mostly also massively of note. Those are all instants and sorceries, right?
Yeah.
And then could you argue that Adventure, in effect, is kind of a split card?
No, absolutely it is.
I mean, obviously you can't have both at the same time. You either have one, you have the spell and then the creature later.
You don't have to do
But you don't have to do the spell into the creature. You can just do the creature by itself. So they've been trying to do this. I mean, modality is honestly probably one of the greatest things that Magic has to play with, right? Is you need, and everyone knows that if a spell can do multiple things, it's even if it's more expensive, it's better than any card that does one thing for cheaper. Because that ability to have different uses in different situations is kind of what gives Magic such a diversity. But yeah, okay. So let's talk about rooms.
Yeah.
So rooms are exactly formatted as Andy said as similar to like a fuse card, of where there's two different sides to it, and then there's a banner across the middle. The banner across the middle here isn't at the bottom. Weirdly enough, it's in the middle of the card, just underneath the type line, and you have two different mana costs. You can play either side, and these are subtypes to be rooms. This is a subtype of enchantment, similar to cases or sagas, or what was the other one they did recently? Classes. Also battles. No, battles are a different type entirely, not subtype.
Oh, I don't pay attention to that.
But again, couldn't battle just been another type of enchantment?
Yeah, 100% good.
Probably, absolutely. So you can basically cast it for either side, similar to like a split card. But then whilst it's in play, because obviously enchantments are permanent, it sits in play. You get the effect of the side you paid for, but then at a later time you can pay the mana cost of the other side to unlock the room of that side.
Yeah.
And I think the exact terminology is you may cast either half. That door unlocks on the battlefield. As a sorcery, you may pay the mana cost of a locked door to unlock it. Now, before we get into like the actual cards, I want to address very quickly. I don't think that having complicated vernacular like this, it's funny, right? Because we had a conversation about this about gift and promising with Bloomburrow. The more very specific language you use, it feels a little bit like it makes each individual. If a reminder text also has to be wordy and nuanced, it stops being reminder text for me at that point, because you've almost got flavour text within your reminder text.
If you take extort, for example, being a famous case of like reminder text, because it's got the Orzhov symbol in it, right? This is the thing that people bring up. It explains what extorting is. It doesn't say dooba 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 doo, and
did you pay the tax?
Did you extort and did you pay the tax?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, yeah.
Whereas both of these have essentially what I like to call flouncy language, of where they've kind of made it feel it's for flavour purposes. So we can't really be annoyed. But from the Mel side of things, you don't need those words, and the fact they've added them in to give the card a bit more nuance. Yes, it gives the greater flavour to the card, and it kind of carries the card better. But is it still a little bit alienating and distancing? I don't know how, for example, it sounds in other languages, and you've got to change. Like, are there any languages of where the words that you have to use to express that same phrase then makes it have an extra line? You know?
Yeah, I also don't love the they use the term "pay the mana cost." Isn't it mana value?
Well, no, because the mana value is how much is the converted mana cost of the card.
See, this is it. It just seems redundant.
Yeah, whereas the cost itself is specifically what you would have to pay.
I also think, from a flavour point of view, I actually love the idea that they're using, because the whole point of Duskmourn, the setting is the house is alive. The house is an entity.
The plane is that the house is Duskmourn and Duskmourn is house.
This is a really slick way. They've done it. There's 28 cards. That's a
not including chunk. Were there any extras put into the commanders?
I can never remember.
I can't remember. There might be. If not, there's still around 30.
So it's around 30 of these room cards. That's a big chunk of your card stock has been put into this idea that actually because you want the game to feel, the whole point of what they're trying to do with a lot of this top-down design, and this is a top-down set, you want to feel like you're doing the thing. They wanted you to feel like you were playing D&D with Forgotten Realms and Battles for Baldur's Gate. They wanted to feel like you were, solving a murder mystery in Murders of Karlov Manor. They want you to feel like you're moving through the house and the effects and the rooms that you're trying to tackle. And I think that is a huge boon. There are flavour things about these cards that I despise. Firstly, I hate the fact that the box is in the middle.
I don't.
It makes it break into
sideways
quarters.
Cards, man, are really hard to pull off.
And also, I very rarely criticise the art outright, because if I don't like the art, I just end up going, it's not for me, or I don't mention it. I usually only like to praise the art because it's literally subjective. However, from a design point of view, from looking at these cards as a player, they are wildly inconsistent with the breaking of the art in the middle.
Remember when they said in the panel, they said specifically, this is with the panel that we happen to actually see live, because we happen to be in Amsterdam
we were in
at the time.
Yeah.
And they made a point of saying when they saw the first one, I can't remember which one it was, but they said this is probably one of the least interesting centre borders, because they've put as much effort into making sure it feels like two distinct rooms, but it still feels like one specific art piece.
Yeah, they failed.
Yeah, again, I feel like you overstated yourself there a little bit.
Some of them have so it's literally like the kind of partition of the wall where you can kind of see in like the the crawl space of the wall. Some of them it's just like one picture straight through, but it the picture has got like a natural break, so it kind of makes it look like two rooms. And then some of them they've just stuck a random object.
There's a pillar. There's a pillar here because we still need to have two distinctive artworks, even though it's one artwork.
And then the further thing that fucks me off in terms of the actual look of the design of the card is they've kept the frame, say for like Restricted Office Lecture Hall, which is white on one side, blue on the other. They've kept the modern frame and then the middle of the artwork kind of is in the space between where the frames are broken. What the fuck is going on with these cards?
Yeah, because I guess clearly they needed the artwork to extend, because obviously it's vertical landscape. So as you're looking, obviously they wanted to extend it out and down a little bit, so you get a little bit more. But the problem is that the rooms tend to stop at the border of the of the text box anyway, and then it bleeds into the type line and then into the reminder text for rooms, which in some of them I think is fine, but for other ones it's like it didn't seem necessary. And I know you want to maximize the art space, but for some of it doesn't seem like it was like when they made those alternate art planeswalkers for Nahiri, Jason, Nissa in Skyclave Zendikar.
You're about to talk about the Dave Raposa art.
Yeah.
This is funny because I was talking about those planeswalkers in a game I played today where I was like, I fucking love those arts.
Because they're great, but the problem is you've created this great idea with all of these different versions of them, and then half of them you can't see.
Oh, you can't see because of the fucking
text box.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's one of those situations like, I see what they're going for, and I like what they've done. I'm just curious to think, couldn't you have made a vertical? I mean, maybe they tried multiple, and again, they wanted it to look
they must
cool.
have done, yeah.
But I mean, I'm looking at Unholy Annex and Ritual Chamber here. You've essentially drawn a border because there isn't a border.
Yeah.
And at that point, you might as well have just created a non-artificial border. You might as well just had them as been two rooms, done them on top of each other. I don't know. Either way.
Also, there's a few of them that refer to the unlocking in their second half, but they say when you unlock the door, they're called rooms. They're not called doors.
And some of them don't have doors, so it doesn't make sense to unlock them. Because some of them, it's just like two halves of the same room.
Yeah. And
I'm like, so what door are you unlock? And again, I like this idea. It's almost like progression, like with D&D, of where you go into one room, and then you get to the next room, and then you feel like you are, as you said, feel like you're progressing.
That mechanic back?
I don't know. Like it's curious to me, especially what you mean the dungeon kind of aspect. Yeah, I mean maybe they couldn't have make it work.
Made some magic dungeons.
So what they essentially needed to do here was, instead of having yet another what I like to call progressive enchantments like classes and cases and sagas of where you start with one ability at the top and you slowly work your way through down them. This is going no. I mean, kind of like read ahead. No. You have one option, and then you can later get the other option. This isn't that you have to start with this one at the top, and then you're going to have to go through chapter 2, chapter 3. It's not like class systems where you have to level up 1, 2, 3. You can start at any point, and you can get the other half of it. Maybe the problem with this is that we're just a little bit unsatisfied with the result, but this was genuinely the best they could come up with for a set that needed enchantments, but they needed them to be cool, splashy effects, but also cheap on curve for eerie, which we'll get to in a second. And then also this idea of exploring through the house. And this was just the best that they could come up with. And yeah, we're being super pernickety here, because I don't actually have a particular issue with them, apart from I don't like sideways cards.
I just think they're a bit of an ugly...
And considering we've spent the last 5 years creating vertical enchantments that have text down the right-hand side and artwork on the left, we've got the exact same thing, but now you've got to turn it sideways.
Well, yeah.
It feels like regression. Yeah. I mean, again, I've said in so many episodes, and I've listened to them back, and I will say every single time, keep trying to do funky things with enchantments. They're the most interesting game type, or the most interesting card type in the game for me. Because it's a permanent that you can do spell things with. And you don't have to worry about fucking power, toughness, creatures attack. You don't have to worry about any of that. You got none of the fucking combat fluff. You've just got a really cool permanent game piece that you can fuck about with. I just don't think this lands as much as some of the others have.
Alright, let's move on.
Okie dokie. Oh, so the next pass rooms is Manifest Dread, which is funny because, good God, we're doing yet another fucking face-down card mechanic.
Manifest.
However,
yeah,
we're not doing cloak. We're not creating a new word. There's literally the word manifest right there.
Yeah. You're
manifesting dread. We'll get to the nuance of that in a moment. And you're not trying to do some ward thing. It is literally... To manifest dread is the player that does so looks at the top 2 cards of their library, puts one onto the battlefield face down as a 2/2 creature, and the other into their graveyard. And then the same thing if it's a creature card, you can turn it face up for its mana cost at any time. It's almost like they realised, do you reckon we overcooked it with Cloak?
Yeah.
And Disguise? And then people went, yeah, we absolutely overcooked it.
Why could they just not do them?
And if in the progression of things, 2 years, whatever, with design takes a long time, and they went back to manifest after going and doing Cloak and Disguise, it just reads a little bit like we tried to do something a little bit cuter for Murders of Karlov Manor, and it now doesn't synergize with anything else. We've actually gone back to Dread to regular manifest anyway. Because this, flavor-wise, I love. I like the idea. I mean, I guess the problem is from a Mel point of view. I love the mechanic of it. I like the idea that you get a choice between 2 different cards. Something goes into your graveyard, which for me, as a graveyard player, that's just extra value. That's just you're drawing 2 cards. One of them gets put into play and the other one goes into a space for later. And I also like the idea of this impending doom coming. You don't know what it's going to be, and you can kind of you can manifest dread within yourself by your opponent creating something face down that you don't know what it is. That flavor-wise is really, really cool. And I like the fact that they haven't tried to muddy the waters. This synergizes with everything. Everything that Morph players play, Manifest players play, Megamorph. God, I hate Megamorph. But it synergizes with these perfectly without having to worry about another token, other flavor. And it kind of actually puts Cloak and Disguise more in the spotlight as being this weird bastard offspring of this other mechanic. And this feels less derivative, even though technically it's more derivative. Because it's not a new mechanic where they've tried to push it and done something else with it. They've literally just taken the name and they've just changed how it works and who it works for. The only problem with that is that Manifest and Manifest Dread don't do the same thing because, again, the mechanic of it.
I don't know if I have much flavour opinions on this. Just as a player, I've got 2 decks now which kind of play with exiling off the top randomly. I've got a Cody deck and a Cruel Claw deck. And I have, only because I've had to play 2 decks which have this kind of thing, started to wrap my head around the idea that there's a difference between true Cascade and Cascade-like.
Yeah.
And I know there's...
Not taking into account Discover.
Yeah. Well, I have a Discover card. That's my point entirely. I have a Discover card in my Cruel Claw deck. So I don't Cascade. I Cascade-like the Discover card. And it's also the bundle box promo, because that's the one I had from blowing a bundle, which doesn't have the reminder text what Discover is. So I'm like, there's so many fucking things, man. Like,
this is the
when
tricky
it flies,
thing.
it flies.
Yeah, imagine coming back to the game 10 years later and all the mechanics are the same but different.
Yeah.
And they all read, like, and you're like, oh, I know what that mechanic goes. Goes, yeah, you think you do, but you don't. So, the thing that for me, the big flavour thing for this is Morph and everything like that was like secrecy, right? Hiding things away, hiding information. Ugin's crazy, colourless ghost fire magic, really cool. This isn't about being secret. This is about having a fear, having something unknown in front of you. Yeah. And what's one of the greatest fears in a set about horror? Fear of the unknown. Yeah. You know, so I like it. I think it carries.
What I will say is that I do like it when they put the abilities onto a card and call the card that ability. So there's a 2-drop sorcery called Manifest Dread, and the ability text is Manifest Dread, brackets, reminder text, and that is the text box.
Similar to,
I think they should
like persist or something
they should
like that,
have.
right?
I mean, we've gone too far now. Or Flash, we've gone too far. There are too many mechanics now that don't have that. Every mechanic should have a card that is just that
Flash
mechanic.
does make creatures gain Flash, right?
No, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, but
there should be a 1-drop white instant that's just called flying.
Do you think Anger should have been called Haste?
Yeah.
Right? Why wasn't it?
Yeah. I think every mechanic. This is a good thing. Engage on social media with us.
Yeah, which ones?
Which doesn't work. I hold.
Should Wonder have been flying? Yeah, I mean, the more I think about it,
or even just spells.
I mean, you can't call a creature Swamp
because you have Leap. You've got Leap. Leap is a 1 blue instant that not 1 blue. It's a single blue instant that gives something flying. Yeah. That could have just been called flying. Yeah. Is there any mechanic that doesn't work? Oh, hello. Is there any mechanic that doesn't work as just like a spell that just is that card?
And are there ones that are like so obvious that they should have done this already? Yeah.
Let us know at MT Flavour. Cool.
I guess my last point on this, though, now I say it, is like, yeah, okay, you've put something scary in front of me. I don't know what it might be, but then it's also like, oh no, a 2/2. But I guess the point is, who knows what's underneath it, right? And you're just scared of what's essentially just an island sitting there being threatening.
You have convinced me that I like it within the set. We're a few minutes in now, and already it sounds like I'm just going like, this is shit. I actually think this set, broadly speaking, is incredibly nuanced. There's just lots of things I wish they had done, but they haven't. I didn't have that with Bloomburrow. Or maybe I did, and I can't remember. We'll listen back.
Okay, so the next one is survival. Obviously, if you've got big nasties, bad monsters and stuff, you've got to have the other flip side of it, you know? Like, we've talked about in the story episode about how this is a symbiotic plane of where Duskmourn needs to keep giving hope and what's another word for hope? I don't know. It's hard in this modern world to think of another word for hope. But it needs to keep sustaining the people within it with the idea that they might survive. Yeah. You know, so what does survival mean? Survival is that if at the beginning of your second main phase, it's only on creatures, I believe. If that creature is tapped, then you get an effect. And the idea being that if it has managed to get through combat, having been active within combat, we'll get to it in a minute how that doesn't necessarily always carry from a Mel point of view. But the idea is that if he's managed to attack and survive, God, it gets a benefit. Which I like the idea of. I think it's nice always to have aggressive mechanics in sets because it ensures that the gameplay always feels like you want to be attacking. What was the Decade was a really good one for this.
I love Decade, yeah.
For it felt flavorful, but then it also ensured that the games moved forwards, that you weren't stuck in fucking, going wide hell of where both players just sat there staring at each other. The only issue I find with this, one, I don't like mechanics that only really go on... I mean, it's not that I don't like mechanics that only goes on creatures, because that's a pretty big fucking statement.
Sure.
I hate flying. But the thing I don't like about this is there's a lot of other ways to ensure that you, quote-unquote, survive combat without engaging in it.
Yeah.
There are any number of tap effects. I don't think they put, obviously, survival on any creatures that tap to have an ability, because that kind of undermines it immediately. But there's Enduring Strength, or whatever, it's the green one that gives all your creatures the Cryptolith Right ability of where you tap to do something. Because I was gonna say, the more I thought about it, and the more I thought about other things that cause you to tap, I was like, maybe that is survival. So getting in a vehicle, yeah, you survive. Because you cannot survive getting in a vehicle, right?
You cannot survive everything.
You know what I mean? It's like being part of the Cryptolith Right. I'm like, imagine there's a few people that didn't survive being part of the Cryptolith Right. So it kind of like it unraveled the more I thought about it. But there are obviously lots of really cool ways to ensure your creatures with survival are tapped post combat to then get the effect without just attacking. It's fine. It's like it's an aggro ability.
Yeah, I mean there have been worse aggro abilities.
Exactly. Eerie.
Yeah.
Consolation isn't good enough anymore apparently because now they've got to add in so whenever an enchantment enters the battlefield or whenever you fully unlock a room.
Yeah.
Not just unlock a room. Because I guess the problem with that is it would trigger twice when you cast a room, right? Because it would unlock the room and enter the battlefield, which would cause two. What about this is eerie? How is unlocking a door eerie apart from, I don't know what's going to be behind the door. But you do, because you actively paid the mana to unlock the door.
What's inherently eerie about enchantments?
Right?
Yeah.
And I guess within the setting of Duskmourn, you could argue, well, enchantment creatures are outside of our knowledge. They're a bit... Because even from a simplistic, how do you define an enchantment creature? There's been a lot of issues with this, like Dockside Chef is an enchantment creature.
Yeah.
Why is it an enchantment? Why can't it just be a creature? Well, because it has an activated ability you normally see on enchantment. Every activated ability under the sun has been on a creature. What makes him an enchantment? And here it makes sense, because everything is a contorted, conformed part and aspect of the house and the plane. So I understand that it's manifesting, not in the same way, but it's creating a being that is enchanted. Like I feel like the Cellar Spawn should all be enchantment creatures because there's almost like they're under a glamour.
Yeah.
Of where they are being formed from Valvagoths or Valgavoths. I realised last week I was saying it wrong like almost the entire episode.
You were, yeah.
Good. But they're ideas of his made form. So of course it's a creature, but it's really actually still part of the plane, which makes it still an enchantment, like a world enchantment kind of thing. But it does get muddied a little bit. I feel like all of the overlords make sense because they're manifestations of the plane, but then the glimmers are also enchantments because they're manifestations of Amanatu's magic. And I guess the idea is it's a sustained spell. That's the way I look at it. But then in the mechanics of magic, isn't every single creature that you summon a sustained spell?
I mean, there's so many things where they kind of cut that idea away in the early 2000s. So yeah, I don't know, man. I mean, they've got to give it like a mechanic. This is where it's like, okay, look, we just have to have a mechanic that is both Enchantress and also fits in with the new thing that we're doing, which is rooms. It's an Enchantment Matters set. We just have to go with it. So
I just don't know if the word eerie was the right word for it. But that's okay. We didn't like Offspring either. So there's only so many words in the English language, and Magic is using a bunch of them already. So eventually you run out. And I guess the idea is that if I saw a creature that was also an enchantment, I would be like, well, that's a bit weird. And isn't that basically just the definition of what something is eerie? It's not necessarily malicious, it's just incorporeal a little bit, hard to understand, hard to get a measure of. Maybe. Who knows? Again, I don't feel like the carry between unlocking rooms and having an enchantment come into play, I think is a really hard thing to balance from a flavour mechanic point of view. I don't know what word could summarise both those things together very well.
No, not me.
Impending.
I like impending.
So, on the long list of random mechanics that are only on 5 or less cards... they added this very, very late. The idea was, I think, that originally they wanted, and this is really obvious with the card that should have been a curse, which I'm going to very quickly talk about, or a Grievous Wound. Grievous Wound, a lot of people are like, why wasn't this a curse? And it's because originally this was part of this whole impending kind of mechanic thing that they wanted to do. It got massively cut back on, eventually only ended up being on the mythic cycle of the set, the Overlords. The idea being that these are enchantment creatures. You can have them, which is, I guess, opposite to the enduring cycle, which I guess we'll come to at the end of it. But the impending cycle is you can play it for a cheaper cost as an enchantment, and it will have an effect. And then after a certain number of turns, kind of similar to Suspend, it will then become a creature. It's kind of like halfway between Suspend and Devotion, in my mind.
Yeah, the thing I like about this, in terms of, in fact, the whole thing, top to bottom, is that they wanted a Suspend thing. So, okay, right, how can we use this, like how we talk about all these mechanics, how can we do it in a way that doesn't feel like it's just this, but different, but actually feels like its own thing, but it still might, for example, work in a time counters deck, and still fit the flavour. I mean, we're ripping into them about a lot of this. There's a lot of things that you need to like factor in. That's not lost on me. And the reason I think this works, especially within the idea of Duskmourn being this plane full of demons or invocations of demons, where like if you're afraid of something, this is where this set kind of spins you out, because you've got to talk about the human condition way too much. If you're afraid of something, the fear of that thing is as real as the thing that you're afraid of.
Arguably greater.
Arguably greater, and it's there constantly. If I'm afraid of, I mean, obviously in this set it's like all these kind of fancy things, but if I'm afraid of like being hit by a car or whatever else, that fear of worrying of being hit by a car when I'm on the side of a busy road is as real as the actual cars going past.
Yeah.
But the cars will come eventually. This is maybe getting away from me, this analogy. But the idea that, say, for example, Overlord of the Hauntwoods, the idea that this horrible creature, its effects on you are still having an effect on you, especially tangibly within the magic world of Duskmourn.
Before it's even really arrived.
And then he's like, well, I'm fucking here, and now you've got to deal with
and
the,
now
the
he can
6'5" body.
Yeah,
you know.
now he can deal you damage and tangibly hurt you.
I love it. And the fact that if you were using this in a time counter deck and outside of the context of the set, you could really fuck with people because you were afraid and now it's fucking here, like quicker than you thought. Like it's, I don't know, the whole thing works for me.
My only issue with this cycle, because I love the idea they're going. It's kind of opposite to Eerie, of where I feel like they just came up with a word that fitted for the set, but didn't fit for the mechanic. This is very similar, where they go, oh, but like it's coming, like it's an impending. Oh wait, should we just fucking call it impending? And it's also interesting that it's not italicized, whereas Eerie is as a keyword mechanic italicized, but impending isn't, because the rest of the fucking flavor, the rest of the reminder text is italicized, so it wouldn't carry. And I imagine there's actually something we probably dig deep into at some point is how they design cards and what things they put on.
Well,
and that
100%. I guarantee they have a set of brand guidelines.
Yeah.
I just don't know what those are.
Exactly. And I feel like sometimes it kind of crosses over and you're like, oh, I can see the amount of work that must go into making sure this visually is coherent, as well as mechanically is coherent. My gripe with these, especially from the main 5, and this is no offense to any of the artists, because they're all very visually indulgent pieces, they're not scary enough to me to be avatar horrors. They are avatars of horror.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you just look like a broken tapestry kind of thing. Like, there's no birds for scale. There's no someone in front losing their bloody minds at the Overlord coming at them. In fact, even the alternate artwork for Overlord of the Flood Pits doesn't even look like it should fly. And it's like, cool, you've created such a high impact text box, and then the artwork's kind of like random cami, because that's what they look like to me. They look like random camis.
Yeah, I think I have a bit to say on the art direction specifically of the set, and about like cards that I think are horrifying or whatever. So maybe we'll talk about it in a minute. But I think this set benefits from the idea that it kept its ideas so broad because it's what people bring with them, or it's what Valgavoth has consumed from other people from other planes. When we saw a lot of the key art and a lot of the kind of early card art, we were like, what the fuck is the visual identity of this set? And actually, as I said in the last episode, the context of what the plane is and what the set does bring it all together.
It somehow carries, And
so I see what you're saying, but I'm not surprised.
Yeah, and to be fair, flip coin of that, the alternate artworks, the ones that we see that are going to come in collector boosters, the one that obviously had the big, that will have Japanese artists. Shockingly enough, Japanese artists, really good at horror.
Yeah.
Really good
at
horror.
You ever read a Junji Ito?
And they're very close to the same artwork. So it's not like a complete reimagining. In fact, Overlord of the Hauntwoods, I think I couldn't actually differentiate the two artworks I was just looking at the regular artwork. I'm now looking at the alternate artwork, and they're the same picture. You know, it's the meme from the American Office.
Sure.
Whereas all of the others, similarly, they have a very similar style to what the other one was. They're not trying to reinvent completely. It's just a more indulgent art style. They definitely got given the same remit. They definitely got given the same blurb and went, cool, both of you try and do what you want with it, you know? And obviously they get a bit more play space. They've got the whole fucking card art to be able to do because it's fully extended. And those, to me, do look a little bit more horrifying and a little bit more indulgent in them trying to freak you out. Cool, whatever. On the flip side of that, just while we're here, because I've got them right below, the enduring cycle. So you've got impending as an actual keyword, and then enduring as a moniker cycle. And these are, instead of enchantment creatures that start as enchantments and then slowly become creatures, these are enchantment creatures that come in as creatures, and when they die, they come back as the enchantment. So it's kind of like one of them is, this is the hope in front of you, and then even when it dies, the hope still lives within you. Whereas the impending cycle is, this is the horror that you feel is coming, and oh my god, it's coming, and eventually it's going to be here.
Yeah.
That dichotomy between those two cycles, I think, is phenomenal.
Yeah.
And to have two mythic cycles, which is, you know, almost like 70%, 75% of your mythics from the set are these 10 cards. Like, yeah, amazing. You've done a really, really good job of making me understand the horrific side of the plane and the hope, you know, that has to exist within that. Because horror can't exist without the human condition, as you said, to actually be scared of it.
Is that it for mechanics?
I think there's one... No, that's it. Beautiful.
We've got a couple of new creature types.
Absolutely. Let's talk about some creature types.
And fuck me, are they flavor, like key types that have a lot of flavour attached to them?
Yeah, it's not just, oh, here's a new animal. You've got a badger.
Yeah.
For the first time.
Thanks for the weasel, bro. Like,
Yeah, exactly. Right.
Toy and clown. Now, clown is not actually a new creature type.
No. There was some in unstable, right?
No, what was it?
Infinity.
Unsellable. Unplayable.
Unfun to you, I guess.
Unbelievably shit fucking magic card. Yeah. So we have clowns. We can talk a little about... I mean, so yeah, we have clowns in Infinity, and now we have a bunch of clowns in Duskmourn. You have the Jolly Balloon Man and Vicious Clown being the two that are... and Razorkin Horde Caller. You have got a copy of the
Jolly Balloon Man in front of me,
those are the ones that are in the main set, and then there are obviously some in the Commander decks as well. I mean, so this is maybe something more when I talk about like my sort of journey with the themes of this set, but I guess I'll touch on it a little bit here. I think it's really interesting how they've gone for clowns, as in the idea of how Westerners view the idea of a clown, because clowns exist in many forms throughout human culture and like identity, but they are very much Western circus clown style. But they've done it in a way where the whimsy of the horror is horrific.
Yeah.
Like the Jolly Balloon Man is a horrifying prospect. It's a character that blows up the facsimiles of a head into a balloon, and then you kind of read what the card does, which is creates token copies of creatures, except they're 1/1 red balloons, and they get sacrificed. So it's like, it's actually the thing that's getting killed.
I need to look at this token. Wait 1 second.
It's just, so I love the fact that they could have gone too cheesy with it, or like, hey, look, it's a clown, aren't people afraid of clowns? But no, they went like, no, look, these things are fucking terrifying.
Right, so do you know what's funny, right, is there's already a red balloon token because of Infinity.
Yeah.
And it is just a red balloon, and I don't know if they haven't done one for Duskmourn or not, because obviously each one that they make has different characteristics, because it's also got the colours, types, and abilities, so it doesn't make sense to make it's going to be a copy, right? So it's kind of funny they went, hey, look at this really innocuous balloon token. We're going to fuck it up in the most gruesome, horrible way. And this is tangible horror.
Yeah.
It's really fucked that it is, because you've got a random fucking human clown who's blowing up facsimiles of people's heads. But that's tangible. I don't know why it's so tangible.
I think it's
obviously
exactly...
it lives rent-free in most people's, social
It is what
mind.
they should have been doing with these unsets. They shouldn't have just been going, look how funny we are. They should be like, no, this is a Magic the Gathering set. It just so happens to be set in a space circus. Like,
you could argue that Duskmourn is almost like a subset of an unset, of where it's going, real world exists. We know that. Let's turn some of it into Magic. And I feel like this is probably, and we said this in the story as well, like, this is probably as far as you can push the envelope of, no, that's just something I can literally walk out of my door and see and get away with. And again, maybe it's because it's such a push aspect of the horror side. You don't want your fun gambling kind of, because I find this set really fun. A lot of the references and everything, even if it's like quote unquote horrific, I find it fun. It's like, oh, that's neat. I see how you've kind of gone for that. And because it's not creeping suspense in a film with the fucking score in the back that's kind of almost, sketching me out and I can't look from behind my fucking fingers. It's not like that. It's all in front of me and I'm engaging with it how I want to. And if I look closer and the artwork's a little bit scary, I stop looking at it. It's not like the film is going to carry on scaring me.
Yeah.
The cards are only as scary as I want them to be. And I like that perspective on them. And I think it's hard as well because you're trying to make a set that's scary but universally scary. And maybe that's easier than making a joke set that's universally funny. So maybe that's where the line is. They went for an emotion that's easier to kind of prey on. Newspapers don't always talk about good things. They talk about bad things because everyone kind of thinks the same things are bad, whereas different people think different things are good. So let's talk about the bad things. That's more of a universal opinion. It's probably similar to that in how it's worked out.
The next proper true new creature type they brought in is Toy. 12 cards with the creature type Toy. And they're across all colours. Actually, there's no blue one.
They don't have time for toys.
They have no black ones either, so it is just really red, white, and green, and colourless. Interesting. I'm sure there are some in the Commander decks. Again, we just look at the main sets of these things. Now, here's my thing with toys. I think it's about fucking time they had toys as a creature type, if only because they are such a mainstay of not just horror, but fantasy sort of imagery in general. I mean, God, you look at this is a very niche reference, I suppose, but you look at the Indigo League Pokemon first season. Sabrina's got a little toy, that she's possessed by. Yeah, do you know what I mean?
That's very cool.
It's just so a part of pop culture and has been since toys were invented. Toys are creepy, and I think it's such a good setting. There's one toy in this thing that will kind of tie into another point later where I'm like, you're a pile of shit, but the rest of it I quite like. And individually, I think some of the toys have really flavourful on the mark mechanics. If you look at something like Attack in the Box, pun name I'm not a fan of, whatever, but
it makes sense.
Yeah, whatever. Whenever Attack in the Box attacks, you may have it get 4/0 until end of turn. If you do, sacrifice at the beginning of the next end step. So the idea that you're popping the Jack in the Box and then it's a spent toy, so it's
literally just a two.
And then you have something like Piggy Bank, which is, again, I don't know why I picked the two most innocuous ones. When Piggy Bank dies, create a treasure token. You smash the Piggy Bank, you get a token.
Yeah, but that does not look like the kind of piggy I want to smash.
No.
That is unsmashable.
Yeah. Moving on. What I would say is why have they done... For only 12 cards, and I will say that, they've made a whole new creature type without giving it its own identity in any way.
Oh, I'm kind of glad, because I don't want it just to be, here's the creature type, here's the lord, here's the... It doesn't feel typal, it just feels like there are so many things they wanted to put in this set that they needed... They justified
it doesn't need to be typal. So, archers, for example... When you have Archer, you expect it to have reach, or to have tap and then it deals damage to a flyer, right? You can't do an Archer typal deck. I mean, you can do whatever you want. Thoughts I had some, fucking train thoughts about this on the way here today. I was like, couldn't it have been every time it interacts with another creature? So, say, every time it blocks, it does a thing. These are meant to be haunted toys. They would need to be played with.
True.
It could be something like, tap this creature, so they all have a similar thing where it's tap Attack in the Box, or tap Arabelle Abandoned Doll. Target creature gets a curse effect.
I suppose so. It's similar to Food or Clue, where they stopped putting it on tokens, start putting it on regular cards,
or the idea,
and then they also got their extra ability to tap and sack for whatever.
Mechanically,
the
it's
did.
Whatever creature you're interacting with this toy has picked up the toy.
But isn't that the point? Is that these aren't interactable toys? These are toys that interact with you.
Yeah, but that's my point again. A lot of them are when it. I mean, to be fair, a few of them are when it dies or when it gets sacrificed, it does a thing. So, but not all of them. They all just need something which makes them a toy. Why is a goblin a goblin?
I guess, but that's why is a goblin a goblin?
But a vampire, but anything that right? Okay, so obviously, there are lots of creature types in Magic where, because they've been here forever and because they go through different planes and they have different identities,
they might have multiple mechanical tie-ins.
100%. However, you and I and everyone who listens to this fucking podcast, because they're the same as us, because why would you be listening to this if you weren't? We all know if a vampire had something that a vampire didn't do, we would all go, why the fuck does that vampire have goad or something?
I guess my justification is they looked at a bunch of cards that they could have just called a construct or whatever other thing, and they went, no, we're we're actually going to make them all toys. There's enough of them, which is already 12 different toys that all feel individual. Mechanically and flavorfully, they feel like individual things. It's not like, oh, that's just the same thing as the other. They all have their own individuality. And then to go, well, let's actually just call them all toy, and then from here going forwards, and also, does it not flavor-wise identify what set they're from? Because this comes from a plane of where they are socially progressed enough that their animatronics and things aren't weapons for war. They're not things that help agriculture. They are playthings. Most planes don't have an artificer who will make a plaything because they just simply don't have the privilege of being from a plane that has playtime. And that, for me, kind of self-justifies them of where they've gone, we need to hit the nail on the head on a bunch of these references, be it Chucky, Annabelle, any of the other things, be it Toy Story, all of the different ones that they've managed to kind of get. And they go, let's put it all under a banner, make a new type that actually fits all of them. None of them feel like against the grain. Yes, they all could have been constructs. And for some of them, it's not the creature type, it's the creature class. Clockwork Percussionist is a monkey toy. Friendly Teddy is a bear toy. Annoyingly and horrifically, the twitching doll.
Well, that was the one that everyone lost their mind about. So both arts for twitching doll are fucking rad. But like,
yeah, Isla does not agree.
I don't know. I think there's a missed opportunity. I also think there is a bit of politics of they've already done 4 cards in Magic, 2 of which being in the Doctor Who sets, which mention a toy maker of some description that obviously don't have anything to do with the toys in this set. So I think a little bit like they feel like they've missed the boat maybe on doing something really specific with them. I
feel like for every person who will agree with you on the Archer thing and go like, oh, they should all have reach, there'll be someone going, but they shouldn't all just be the same.
But no, I'm not saying that.
But you know what I mean? As in there's a hyperbole in both directions of where I feel like this is fine because it sits in between, and I didn't even clock how many toys there were in the set, and it didn't annoy me there were so many. The thing for me is that this will be an isolated creature type that will be very hard to replicate in other sets.
I don't know, man. When I'm building a deck, and actually I don't think it matters about the format, when you are building decks, if they have a certain strategy or if they have a certain feel or flavour, even if you're not building typally, you start to gravitate and you start to go, oh shit, my Oars of Life Gain deck has loads of bats and it has loads of vampires and it has loads of spirits, because that's the kind of thing that the Oars of like to do, and it gives it that tied together flavour, even if you're using cards outside of a set. And I feel like there was an opportunity to have in a year, 2 years' time, when they have different sets with toys now peppered in, for you to turn around one day and go, oh, do you know what works really well with this commander? Toys have like really good this for that.
So shall we then analyse the fact that they're only in 3 colours, because then maybe that toy person can just be Naya or Boros, can be kind of similar to the Jolly Balloon Man, and then you've got all of the toys that are already existing in Magic apart from Twitching Doll available in the deck.
Yeah.
So who knows? Again, like they might not make, because obviously the Celestial Toy Maker was very specific to Doctor Who. So if they do want to do another Toy Maker in the future, probably maybe it might be a bit unsetty or whatever.
Well, there is a card called Toy Maker,
yeah,
and then you had Tornos the Toy Maker, which was another Tornos card. Is
green,
blue
true,
one.
And he was blue, yeah. And I guess that's the other problem, is that these are all things built by probably blue mages, but none of them are blue. Yeah, yeah. Would Frankenstein and Frankenstein's monster be the same colours?
No, not at all. I think also individually they're all very cool. Marvin, Murderous Mimic, is terrifying.
Yeah, I like the Chucky. I like the Annabelle. I like the random baby one that's from Toy Story.
Yes, that's
the Spider
exactly,
Baby thing.
Yeah.
Giggling Skitter Spike.
Yeah.
The fact is, giggling, like, you don't need to add... The thing that made the one in Toy Story kind of palatable, but also sketchy, was the fact it was silent.
Yeah.
You were like, I can believe that its intents are good because it's not making any noise. If that thing starts fucking giggling, get it out of here. Get it out of here. No, that's enough. And there's Raggedy Andy as well, I think.
In case I forget, the one that can get to fuck is Living Phone.
Yeah, but is that another Toy Story reference from Toy Story 3?
I don't care. This is the part.
I don't fucking care.
This is what's wrong with this set. You look at the card gallery and you feel it. It jumps out to you. It's wrong. It doesn't belong in the game.
Yeah, no, I get it.
We'll get to it.
All right, shall we start? Because that's all of the mechanical side of things. Should we start talking about some actual I like this card for whatever reason?
Go on then. Yes. Let's talk about things we like.
Okay, cool. Well, I don't know if I like it or not, but it's finally got to the end of Tamio's story with Tale of Tamio. Give me one moment. I've deleted Mythic Spoiler. I'll be right back with it in just one moment. There we go. Thankfully, it's right at the top, so I don't have to worry. So, curiously, I think this is the only legendary saga, which caused a question, right, of what makes this one, and it's the only saga in the set. Which is also interesting because you've got a top-down enchantment that then looks opposite to the room enchantments because the text box is on the left, whereas with the rooms it's on the right because it's supposed to be flipped and be at the bottom. Anyway, that aside, it's the only legendary enchantment, a legendary saga, because anyone can tell the story of any of the other stories. That doesn't make it a legendary story, right? Because anyone can tell it. But this is specifically the tale of Tamio being spoken through the ectoplasmic gizmo thing that the cultists use. This isn't someone else telling the story. No, this is the when we said we'd eventually see Tamio in her story form.
This is it.
This is it.
Yeah.
This is it. This is the final form of Tamio before, Nashi finally lets her go and then she dissipates into the ether and that's it, gone forever. And it's just really nice to have a reference to her in the story and actually kind of get one last final, because I didn't think that Nashi's was it Moon's Legacy? I don't think that was really the true send-off for Tamio that we needed. And it would have been a shame to come all this way, make his journey about his mum, and then not get a little final thing for Tamio to be like, right, she's died like 4 times at this point. We've done it. It's fine. And then the thing about it I like is the abilities aren't particular. I don't feel like are super powerful. Chapter 1, 2, and 3 do the same thing. Mill 2 cards. If 2 cards share a type of those cards, you draw a card and repeat it. The idea of going through the stories, telling the stories, and if you tell the same story twice, you keep going. You need to keep talking until you say something interesting, which is, I guess, what Valgavoth wanted. And then the final one is exile any number of target instant sorcery or Tamio Planeswalker cards from your graveyard, and then you copy all of them. The idea that it's this last hurrah of all of her life, all the things that she's done, all the spells that she's cast, and all the people that she's been. That's really cute and lovely to me. And it's also just nice. I like it when you get the legendary border on non-creature spells.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, it's a home run. I'm going to talk about some of the artwork in this set, just in terms of quite broadly, if that's all right, because I fucking love it. Yeah. I actually think there are so many individual cards in terms of its mechanics that I really love that actually it would be another 2 hours for me to go through it. So that's why I think, for whatever reason, this set has really gripped me on like a vibes level, rather than me going, oh, this is great for this deck and this is great for that deck. It's another Magic set. We get one every fucking week.
But it's weirdly cozy. Yeah. For being a horror set, I feel like this is a really cozy set.
And the card that really gripped me and was like, actually, this is fucking hard. This set goes real hard, is Abhorrent Oculus, which is the 2 and a blue eye. All right? So as an additional cast this spell, exile 6 cards from your graveyard, flying mythic, right? At the beginning of each opponent's upkeep, Manifest Dread. That you have humans for scale. This eye is this giant, horrifying eye. But, like, me describing the art doesn't really give the justice for it. It is everything that this set could have been in every other card, and they did indeed achieve in a lot of it. It's this hugely spooky, almost quiet, eldritch looking
you say quiet because it hasn't got a mouth, because it's just an eye.
But this, like, so if you look at something like, I'm just trying to pick another card, Rage, what's it? Something of Rage? There's a red enchantment card. Vigor of Rage, Wrath of Rage, something of Wrath.
What does it do?
Oh, I don't know. It's a damagey thing, isn't it?
What's
there are a lot of cards in this set which are very loud because there's someone screaming.
Oh, I see what you mean.
Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Or it's like the chainsaw. There's a chainsaw card in this set which literally you can hear it go
screaming nemesis.
Maybe
is what you're
That's
thinking
not what
of.
I'm thinking of.
Okay.
But there's lots of parts of this horror set where it's like it is about the kind of the it attacks your senses.
Waltz of Rage.
Thank you. I was right. Sort of. I'd said enough words to be right. So much of the horror in this set is based off the idea that something attacks your senses. Like, it's the giggling baby's head that you're talking about.
Skitter Spike, yeah.
This is such a quiet horror. You can imagine this thing looming over you and just being like... Whoa.
And you don't even hear it, yeah.
There's what's the DLC for Skyrim? Everything goes back to Skyrim. Where it's where you go to like the Eldritch like realm, and all of like the creatures in that one, if you're from fucking 2008, like all of the creatures in that are like just so spookily quiet and like eerie. And there are so many cards that fit into that. But Another one is Creeping Peeper. Anything with eyes is just like horrific. And I just think that what this set has achieved, where things like maybe even Innistrad, Midnight Hunt, Crimson Vow, or any of the other sets which go, there's a little bit of horror here. Murders of Karlov Manor was literally a set based around people getting stabbed the fuck up.
The word murder is in the title.
The set
of
symbol is a knife.
Yeah.
And yet there was very little blood and guts and gore. Whereas this is a set where, like, one of the artworks for Disturbing Mirth is like a pinhead with a brain that's opened up with like a mouth.
There are some horrific red cards in this set.
How has this set gotten past the censors in some countries? I don't understand.
Yeah, my one for me was the one where he's like looking like he wants to hug. Turn Inside Out.
Yeah.
And it's like, he's literally just like a flesh, like he's like the Demigorgon, but it's his whole fucking midsection's opening. I'm like, Magic has never shied away from horror per se.
Yeah.
Like, if you look through the entire history of Magic, there have been some horrific artworks, but recently it's kind of done a good job of not, even Phyrexia felt like, at times, but it was like quirky horror, like teeth and things like that.
Yeah, exactly. There was detail where
whereas
like,
this is
horrifying.
Just right there going, this is supposed to be scary.
Yeah.
You know, like, there are things here that are going to trigger your, like, base fears.
And this is what's reassured me with this set. Sometimes, like, for example, Outlaws of Thunder Junction, nothing in that set outside of the Atin group nothing in that set reassured me that the people who played the game or made this set cared about Magic. It was a tick box that they had to get through to get to the next thing. I spoke about how Bloomburrow, I felt every facet of that seemed like the people who made the game, from the logo, the set symbol up, cared about Bloomburrow. And it's these cards and the fact that they went, no, we're gonna fucking do it and we're gonna do it hard, is made me think they really cared about what they were trying to achieve. Which is why it fell so short for me with some of the other things that undermined that, in my mind, and undercut it thematically. Things like Baseball Bat, or there's like the cassette tape card, found footage, all that kind of thing. Which, we can talk about it maybe more, I don't know if actually we'll have time, really, but like we can talk about it more later. I think there was a lot of really deep shit that they were getting into in this set for like, no, we're really going to make this a fucking horror set. And then they ripped it apart with other things. I don't know how you feel about it.
So one of my picks was Jump Scare. And it's a single white instant until end of turn. Target creature gets +2/+2, gains flying, and becomes a horror enchantment creature in addition to its other types. Flavor text. Boo! Now, the artwork is some spooky gremlin kind of guy, but he's upside down. So when you cast the Jump Scare, because you're ideally probably putting this on your own creature to give it protection, a little bit of a boost, whatever, you're jump scaring your opponent because they get the artwork. Because when you see an artwork upside down, your stupid human brain goes, oh, that's not so scary because I don't see it in the way it's supposed to be seen. Your opponent is seeing how it's supposed to be seen. Scary, sketchy goblin guy. So you're jump scaring your opponent. Like, that's so cool. And I like the idea that it's kind of a bit of a misplay on the flavor, because I would like the creature to gain flying because it's had to jump. And it's like, and I guess they're playing on the word of like, it's a jump scare and the creature is jumping and getting +2 and becoming a horror. Like, you're making your creature horrific. But for me, it's the opponent that should be jumping. You know, your opponent should gain flying, you know, because they've jumped out of their seat. There's a similar thing of where they know what they're doing, and they've clearly practiced it and played with it to go, so we're going to do a little testing group and see if people respond to it the way we want to. And clearly people responded the way they wanted to, and they went, cool, let's go real deep on this. Because they didn't have to. Again, you don't expect your fantasy Magic the Gathering set to be something that's modern and horrific.
I think I said this online somewhere where it was, they obviously try, and again, this is us trying to say, like, we're not trying to say Magic doesn't have horrifying horror cards. Clearly there are lots of quite disturbing and go hard arts in Magic.
Macabre Waltz being a very good
exactly, and lots of like quite almost like it's farcical how horrible it is, which is why it's even more horrifying. Again, Macabre Waltz being one of them. All the arts from Macabre Waltz is a really good example. But it was Flesh Taker from Innistrad Midnight Hunt, which was the butcher killer with like the cow head on.
Yeah.
Again, a very quiet
Flesh Taker.
Very quiet, looming figure. And I think people going, well, in a set full of werewolves, this cunt. Sorry, to use that word again. Yeah, I always whenever I use that word, I like, oh no, I've gone hard here. But like, this guy is like the worst, right?
Yeah.
And I think that they've clearly
he's not lost his humanity.
They do things 2 or 3 years in advance. They clearly went, oh well, here we go.
Yeah,
here we go.
That's felt like a what's it? What do they call them? It's a not a plug. When they put plant. That felt like a plant to be like, let's see how people like it. Because again, as you said, Murders of Karlov Manor, super tame for a set about
really
about
sanitized
murders.
actually.
But again, most whenever we watch like Midsummer Murders or CSI,
Are they doing Agatha Christie?
You know, like none of
Miss Marple.
Yeah, like none of them. It's never like it's not Psycho levels of you're getting attacked with a knife. You know, it's like oh no, the person happened. You know, it's
Sergeant, what's happened in Midsummer Vale today? Well, they've killed 15 people and hung their fingers up on the windowsill.
they don't do that.
They're not going to do that.
They don't do that. Yeah.
If any of our non-UK friends wants to have a good idea of like Agatha Christie, Miss Marple. No, what am I talking about?
Murder She Wrote.
Murder She Wrote. Exactly.
Yeah.
If you want to have a UK Murder She Wrote, watch Midsummer Murders. You will not be disappointed.
You'll be surprised that there's anyone who lives in this village at the end of it. Because it goes on for seasons upon seasons, and so many people.
I always think it's the inspector's wife because she's always at the scene of the thing that happens.
Yeah, and he's always discussing with her, and she's there going, "Oh, I hope he doesn't find out."
Anyway,
right, let's eventually come round to the elephant in the room. Meat Hook Massacre 2.
Oh yeah.
So that's a sequel card.
Yeah.
So we've had the Meat Hook Massacre.
Yeah.
And then we've got the Meat Hook Massacre 2. No, and that's the thing, is it's not the. And I'm annoyed that Meat Hook Massacre wasn't called the Meat Hook Massacre, because then it would have made this carry so much better to be the Meat Hook Massacre 2, because it's just that little bit too mouthy to then make it feel like that's not how you'd call a Magic the Gathering card. And this is just close enough that I'm like, had it said part 2, and I guess when you've got XX black in your fucking casting cost, it's kind of hard to make space for all of the rest of the text. But originally I was like, this is like everything I don't want from this set. But then I look at it, I'm like, it's double the black, it's double the X, all of the effects are like a little bit more annoyingly convoluted. It's not just you gain life or you lose life. It's like, no, because then you've got to pay life and you do. It's every single sequel ever where they go, so you know what we did with the first one? Yeah, but more. We're going to do more of everything.
And you know what? In isolation, I actually really love that. And do you know why it's maybe picks up on our radar a little bit? Because they have other cards in this set, like Baseball Bat.
Chainsaw.
Saw.
Like there's chainsaw and saw in this set.
That's why.
Like, and again, it's about how and I don't know why the line is different. I think it's because as I just said, all of the other bits of the card feel so overworked that it could not have been called anything other than Meat Hook Massacre 2. And it's almost like it felt like tongue in cheek and knowing, going to the audience going, hey players, we know what we're doing here. Whereas the other things are going, here's a baseball bat, and you're like, cool. Did you make it cool? No. It's just a baseball bat. And I think that's the line, is that certain references, and I guess it's also the line where you said about certain jokes will land and certain jokes won't. Like where's the line on puns before it becomes too twee and too tongue in cheek? And I think it's a really hard thing for them to get right across the board, because everyone's going to have different expectations and different perspectives. And I've never been a big issue of the sequel problem, you know. Joker Part 2 aside, but like I don't see an issue with having knowing that you are making a card that is synergistically the ancestor of this other card. This card wouldn't exist if we didn't do this other card, so we are just going to say it's part 2 of that card. And you don't get to do that very often. No. So now you've got a set where you are playing off the film tropes. Fuck it.
And I kind of like that.
Yeah, right.
Because there's lists of other references in this set. So here we go.
Comprehensive list.
I'm going to come into it now. My biggest problem leading into this set is that I felt that having, again, cards like Baseball Bat, and I've spoken about this a lot on Twitter, I mentioned it in the last episode, having cards like Baseball Bat undermine the world building of Duskmourn and of Magic in general, because even though, as many people did point out to me quite fervently on Twitter, baseball was made in the 1800s. There are many things in Magic that, in our own real-world history, was invented later.
Yeah.
But my point is, baseball is still the most modern...
It's not an old-school thing. Yeah. It's a modern thing that happened to have been around for a long time.
And now, there are...
It's like putting a car into a set and going, yeah, but cars have been around for 300 years and other things haven't. It's like, yeah, but you're putting a modern car in. You're not putting an old school car in. You're putting a modern car into
like
the set.
Bugatti Veyron.
Yeah, right. Like at that point, you're not going back to the roots of it. You're actually just showing it in the modern environment.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm not going to go too deep into it because I think, funnily enough, in the sort of 2 or 3 weeks since our last episode, there has been more other things happening in Magic that this conversation's already
Somehow
died.
it's redundant.
But here are, off of all the different Twitter threads that I was a part of, whether I wrote them or I was part of other people, and just talking to other people, there are, in the issues with and no issues camps, there are trends of people's thought processes. And I wonder if you're listening to this, whether you feel you fit into one of those camps, or whether you feel like there's other issues with it. These are the broad spectrum when it came specifically to baseball bat. When I compared it to, say, contested game ball, or indeed other sports that are in Magic the Gathering, and whether it's an issue that in our fantasy card game we have this very real-world tropey thing, and you can, I think, equate it to the fact that there's a pair of, Nike high tops, essentially. There's a pair of sneakers, there's a cassette tape, there's modern sunglasses in this set, and all these different things. Haunted Windbreaker, or whatever the Cursed Windbreaker. So the no-issue camp, they tended to have the idea, well, baseball is an old game, so it's fine because other things have been invented in more recent time. They would also say things like, the multiverse is an infinite land of possibility. Why wouldn't there be a plane where the idea of baseball was invented? That's fair. Some people say it's no different to having other sports in the game, like referenced, like contested game ball.
Yeah.
And then there's other people saying that there are lots of other anachronisms in the set. And also baseball bats specifically have been in other cards anyway, like in a lot of the new Capenna cards. So I understand all that. People like me who had some sort of issue and were trying to vocalise in a way that wasn't just because it feels wrong, which I think is still valid, by the way. If it feels wrong, I think that's
Where do you
fine.
think flavour, like the word flavour, when people say, what do you mean by flavour? I'm like, it's the feeling of a card.
Yeah.
Because flavour I don't lick the fucking cards, do I? So again, it's that idea of how does it feel when you play it? Does it feel like it fits?
Yeah. So people say the object itself is fine, but the name reduces
the moniker, really. It's not being flouncy in any way, shape or form. There's literally a card called Saw.
Yeah.
Why isn't it Rusted Saw?
Yeah.
Edgy Saw.
Baseball bat refers
Slashy
to the
Saw.
game. Yeah.
You know,
People
like
would have still been
anything.
like, okay, so it's a baseball bat because baseball bats are used in Americana horror films. If it was just something called like spiked bat or something, I don't know.
Yeah, batty bat, and it flies as well. You know, you could have made it weirdly twee in any of the way that Magic normally does, and instead it just kind of. I feel like there's a point here where they went, because it's a modern set, we can just get away with going. There doesn't need to be an extra layer of flavour to it.
Yeah.
And just because you put some spikes through it and put some electromagnet, that's in the nicest possible way. You've said baseball bat. That's not a baseball bat. You couldn't play a game of baseball with that. It's got spikes through it and electricity. That is not a baseball bat.
Yeah.
You know,
Other people say that it breaks their immersion, and by that I mean, I guess it's the same thing I said earlier about looking through the card gallery of the toys and seeing that living foam.
Do they never buy a secret lair ever?
Well, there is that aspect to it.
I mean, I get it. There are certain things you can avoid, and it's hard to avoid when it's made when it's in a main set.
What we just said about it being an old game, but it still has a major presence now that is modern. If people don't play it like old-timey baseball, like the major baseball
second
league.
major, but I guess football,
Well, it's America's favourite pastime. It's their main sport.
Oh, really? So I'd have thought it'd have gone football, basketball, baseball.
I think baseball takes up more of like the kind of thing.
Because it's Pee Wee League and things like that, right? It's like your local...
Don't get me wrong, they're all multi-billion industries, but I think officially baseball is like the sport.
Ba-da-da-da-ba-da. That's baseball, right?
Yeah,
cool.
And then also there's no consistency, which is kind of is a slightly separate issue. Like baseball's okay, but you can't put a gun in the game. It's like, do you know what I mean? Like, I know that's a bit
how
of
is
a bad
how
faith
is
argument.
how is a chainsaw okay when it's like clearly a motorized killing machine, but having a rifle of some kind of variety has to have thunder magic to make it justified?
I just think it's, and there's, again, you have a lot of these cards to kind of wrap it up where my feelings lie on it. I think actually I was kind of won round slightly by people going, look, it's fine. Here are the reasons why. A lot of the reasons that you think it's wrong, it's not that you're wrong for thinking them, but actually here's these other examples that taper that being in Magic.
Yeah.
And obviously not every card has to be for my taste. However, what I will say is that if you are going to start putting things like Cursed Windbreaker and Baseball Bat and all these other things in the game, you have to be very careful that it doesn't undermine the experience of an overall set. You get 300 cards. If I'm looking at 3 of them because I think they're really wrong and I can't be the only one because I'm not special, it undermines the other 297.
Isn't it just basic uncanny valley of where instead of just going full on and going, hey, look, it's just actual CGI, you've tried to facsimile something but used but you've only kind of halfway got there of where you've tried to make a magic card, but instead of actually like making a magic card, you've just taken a real world thing and kind of half done it. And this is where the uncanny valley comes in, of where like you look close enough to be a real world thing that I recognize it, but I also know you're not a real world thing, which then makes it highlighted and easy to look at.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of where we're at. We're in an uncanny valley aspect of modern designed magic cards, of where you go, do I still feel like the word magic can be associated to this object? Because magic and saw, for me, shouldn't be synonymous.
Yeah,
you know?
I agree.
Where I'm now going to completely flip that on its head, because I've got an electronic device here that I think might be, how do you make modern objects a Magic the Gathering card? Haunted Screen. 3 mana artifact. It's a TV.
Yeah.
It taps for black or white.
Ah.
But if you pay 1 life and tap it, so if you pay a bit more, it can make green, blue, or red. Which are the 3 colours that TVs project their colour television through. So if you want the basic thing, you just pay and you get black and white. But if you pay a little bit more, it comes in Technicolor.
See, now that's the difference. But that is the difference.
Isn't that cool?
You look at baseball. So I didn't even read what Baseball Bat did. Green and a white. When it enters, attach it to target creature you control. A creature gets 1/1. Okay, fine. So it's like it's equipment. Whenever a equipped creature attacks, tap up to 1 target creature. What the fuck is baseball-y about that? TV set, colour, black and white.
Black and white. And also what I love is that they've managed to go, we've got 5 colours in Magic. Technically, you've got 3 colours in Magic, because white and black are hues.
Oh, shut the fuck up.
Yeah, you're not shades. Sorry, they're not actually colours. But you've managed to go, fuck me. We've got black and white, and then we've got blue, red, and this might have been where this entire set came from. They went, can we just make a TV card? You know, like genuinely, it's so, for me, that is so clever. And then there's this extra bit, which, instead of having flavour text on the card, which I don't mind, they've got a flavour mechanic, which is 7 mana, put 7+1/+1 counters on it. It becomes a 0/0 spirit creature token, and a creature, in addition to its other types, activate only once. It's the ring.
Yeah.
And this isn't the only reference to the ring in the set.
Oh no, well the whole thing about the glitch ghosts.
Glitch Ghost, yes, but I think I like the idea that they tried to find a way of going, they don't want the spirits to feel, because there's actually a spirit card that doesn't feel like it belongs in the set because it's just a normal ghost.
Right.
And I'm like, I kind of preferred it where, because of how Valgavoth's made the plane, the only way you can get through is through this glitching aspect, because you've broken the rules of the plane. You've broken the rules of Afterlife. It isn't just, oh, I'm just the memory of your wife haunting this room. No, it's like, I have struggled to force my way into this plane because you've forced me up to the edge of the multiverse. And I can't go in that direction, so I've been forced back in the other direction, and however metaphysically spirits work in Duskmourn, it's caused me to glitch. Now, the word glitch I do not like.
No.
I like what it means to, it's a spirit that can't even form properly because its metaphysics are so broken. You can't put that on every card instead of glitch. But I know why the word doesn't work for you, and this is why I think eerie didn't work for me from a mechanical point of view, of where sometimes the words just don't actually work for what you're trying to do, because it shouldn't feel like a spirit is electrical. But I like this idea of where you've not been able to fully manifest because everything is so fucked. And then the other one, I think, was the one where you can, every time you cast an instant or sorcery, it gets a counter, and after 7, it deals you 20 damage because it kills you in 7 days. That by itself, very cute. I like it.
Well, there are lots of references that are pretty, like, lots of, like, film references or, like, horror trope references that are then reflected in film, that are then reflected in the set, that aren't on the nose.
Yeah, it's a very much me looking at you, looking at me, looking at
you
kind of thing.
And I love that, and I think that's great. It's not 7 Dwarves from Kaldheim.
Which didn't try very hard at all.
Or whatever it was, Eldraine, sorry. Because it just called it 7 Dwarves. You know, there are many references in this set. Like, there's the Thrice Called is one of, like, the mythics.
As Azralak or whatever his name is.
Which is, Candyman, it's Bloody Mary.
And obviously it's
Beetlejuice, yeah. But they didn't just, they were, there's ways around it where you can be like, this is a thing that exists. Let's put it in there for people to be like, cool. And it was,
I know that reference, but it doesn't also. But if you don't know the reference, it's also still it's a cool Magic the Gathering card. Yeah. It's when the thing isn't cool with the reference, and then the actual card itself, you're like, but this isn't even cool as a Magic card. Like, it's not like, oh, you could have called that something else, and I wouldn't have minded. There are some that I feel like fall, as you say, in that middle ground. You're like, who's this for? Like, I don't like the reference to Blade. Because the artwork is basically just going, here's Wesley Snipes.
Yeah.
And I'm like, great, but if you've seen, if they eventually ever make it, the Mahershala Ali blade, then that card no longer is because the latest blade that you've seen isn't that version. And again, I know, you can't go like, well, you've got to be future proof, because that's not really, because this is a glimpse between the 80s, 70s to 90s, shall we say, horror tropes. I'm surprised there's not a Scream mask in here somewhere.
Your Killer's Mask.
Yeah, which is what Jason Voorhees one.
It's kind of a riff on a lot of that kind of stuff.
Yeah. And fair enough. I get you don't want to put every reference right on the nose, but there are some references I'm surprised aren't in the set, given the other ones that they've put into the set. Yeah. I have one last, I really like this card because I think it's cool, and it's completely irrelevant of any kind of real world reference or anything like that. There's a card in the set that costs black. Doomsday Excruciator. It's not an executioner, and this is the reason I bring it up as well, is it's an excruciator. And the idea is that this is the card Doomsday, which is 3 black, you exile your library, you put, I think it's 6 cards, you exile all but 6 cards, and then obviously the idea is that you make Doomsday piles that then those that will always win the game from. It's a CDH kind of style thing. This guy's a 6/6 flying. It does that, but each player does that. Each player bins their whole library apart from 6 cards that they have face down, except for you draw an additional card on your upkeep. It's the blackest of black cards. The only thing, it literally couldn't fit another black symbol into the mana cost if it tried, which I reckon they probably went, is 7 too many? Is 6 the sweet spot? Flavor text? All stars grow dark. All worlds come to an end.
Yeah.
Because Valgavoth has eaten 2 suns. He has become the world. And this is a demon, one of the most coolly named demons of all magic, and he's just a random denizen of a plane that is already a greater demon. Are you fucking mad?
Yeah.
That is so cool.
Yeah, it's very cool.
So cool.
Do you have a single art that you can pick for the set that is your favourite?
Dominic Mayer, shockingly enough, Vengeful Possession.
Yeah.
And the reason I say this, because it kind of links into all of the paranormal frame artworks, which we'll get to all artworks a little bit later, but the idea, kind of similar to Glitch Goes, so this idea of trying to make a digital image in artwork, for me, is really impressive. Because, yeah, you can digitize something and then just take a snapshot. Snapshot. But the fact that they've managed to make something look like it's technical and it's electrical in a physical piece of artwork, for me, is very, very, very impressive. And it's kind of slightly different to their normal art style. It's still got very similar effects to what was the one that was mostly white background from Mum? Surge of the Machine?
Surge of Salvation?
Yeah, so some similar to that as well. There was another one that's a red card, and it's basically someone moving in a blur, and then everything else around them is white. This one has background to it. It's still got a similar idea of where it feels almost like printing. And then there's been a few, I think they've got a couple of cards in the paranormal art treatment, but a lot of the paranormal art treatments try and do a similar thing. Jeremy Wilson, I believe, does it in Intruding Soul Rager, where it has this glitch effect. And for me, I don't know why, because it doesn't look like a normal magic card, that then makes it actually come across as these spirits of really fucking not existing in this world very well. Because the artwork isn't existing on the card the way it normally does. And that, for me, is, again, why I really like alternate, non-hyper-realistic digital artwork, because it makes me feel like the thing is more of what I would expect it to be.
I think it's a very good pick. Dominic Mayer never misses. Also, very nice person. Met them at Amsterdam. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So aside from, what did I say earlier? A Porinoculus, which again I think is absolutely catches the set. I mean, it's quite rare, actually, that I go for something that's as much of like a tentpole card in the set as I usually do. I'm going to go for Valgavoth Terror Eater as my art for the set. It's Antonio Jose Manzanero, and it's incredible. It's the one where Valgavoth is the house. And
there are so many cool artworks there was lots of what do they call them when they put on the box arts and things like that.
Key art.
There's so much cool key art from Valgavoth that VGV.
VALGA.
Yeah, VGV, not VVG. Yeah, Valgavoth. Not Valvagoth. Valgavoth. Yeah, thank you. There are so many cool ones, and I think the full art lands do a similar thing of where each of them kind of look like he's there in the room.
It's kind of rare as well that they use card images as what is essentially key art on the lead up. They might have a few hero images where like, oh, this is going to be an interesting character.
Yeah.
But
as opposed to the Liliana and Amadati being in the same artwork.
Maybe. Well, yeah,
Legends,
and then stuff that
whatever
just
it was.
doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Maybe it was me just not really thinking big enough when the set came round. But when they first showed this artwork, I genuinely thought that this was it's like a broad key art for like a concept of like what this is, because they hadn't dropped the idea of a demon being the plane or what the Valgamoth was.
Yeah, we didn't know that. All we knew was it was a house that was the plane that was alive.
Yeah. So the idea that this big moth demon, like, it could have just been anything, but the fact that that is a character and that character is the plane, it's so circular and awesome, and the artwork itself is so fucking spooky and badass. I'm like, cool, that's it, job done. You've won.
You did it.
You've won the set.
Yeah. Congratulations. Yeah. Super, super creepy. It's funny because he very much feels like he is not an active creature. Like, if anything, I feel like he should have had that impending... I feel like Valgamoth should have had impending itself, even though he's already happened and the bad thing has already happened. To have that idea of both being part of the house and a creature that's separate, because I don't feel like we'll never get a creature that's Valgamoth before he was bound, but now he's bound. He is implicitly and intrinsically the plane.
What was the one from the Commander set?
It's similar.
He's got red in him.
Yeah. I think it's earlier
also
in the
text box
cycle.
for this version as well, just to talk about the card. 9/9 Elder Demon as well.
We got another Elder.
Flying Lifelink, because obviously he flies, he's a moth demon, but Lifelink because he can suck the life out of
He consumes you and it makes him stronger.
Ward, sacrifice 3 non-9 permanents. That's his, although 3 rather than 4 than in the story, slight flavour miss.
Yeah, but I feel like 4 would make that impossible to play against.
It's the idea that you have to give something up to even
4
get near him.
sounds like way more than 3 when you've got to sacrifice them.
If a card you didn't control would be to put into an opponent's graveyard from area, exile it instead, and then it goes into during your turn, you may play cards exiled with Valgamoth. If you cast that spell this way, pay life equal to its mana value rather than play its mana cost.
I had to hold back so much and buying 3 of these. Because one, he's like the premier card of the set, so it comes with a certain price tag anyway, and I've got a couple of decks that would very much like to have
But it's
him.
the idea that anything that you discard into his being, because he is the house, and then he gets to have it.
He is everything around.
Yeah.
He sees all, he consumes all, and then he takes it and uses it for himself. Terror Eater, I think, is probably... What was the other one called? I think the other one was a better name. Let me very quickly check. Because I feel like Terror Eater is just a little bit too Saturday morning television. Valgamoth, Harrower of Souls. Which I guess makes him slightly... I guess he is a Terror Eater. But that's also a really cool artwork as well. It makes him feel a little bit more tangible. Fucking Deece, man. What a cool dude. I say a cool dude. What a cool concept.
Yeah, and
realised
that's
on
the
a
thing.
card.
I have to focus on that rather than some of the naysay stuff. I think there's a lot of opportunity in this of the set. I don't love some of the directions they took aspects of the set, but as a whole, I think Duskmourn is a net win.
Yeah.
Let's say that for me.
I have a couple of the ley lines of Yawn.
Yeah, whatever.
Why did we? I like the idea of ley lines, but it makes even less sense to have ley lines in a plane that is entirely consumed by a demon.
Yeah.
Or is it a hint that maybe he doesn't have all things under control as much as he wants in this? Maybe he's having lots of manager meetings, being like, "You have no idea the fucking difficulty it is running a fucking plane when you're the plane and you're running around trying to survive. I've had enough of you. I want you all gone. I've got to deal with the world soul. You know, we're in daily meetings over here, and he won't let anything go. Yeah, that kind of idea.
Yeah.
That would be an amazing story. Just Valgamoth just having a day. Like, you have no idea how bad it's been. UFOs?
Yeah,
Aliens?
Fear of abduction. It was on a list of cards where I was like, this doesn't feel right.
There's a vehicle that's literally a UFO,
Now,
which means there must have been in world a UFO,
or like the people of Duskmourn prior to the Valgavothification of the plane.
Valgavothification.
Would have had the same idea of what UFOs were as we do in our world.
If it was a manifested enchantment, fine. But the fact it's an artifact, which for me makes it's tangibly, unless
there's Fear of Abduction has the little green men.
That's fine
artwork.
because that's an enchantment. I don't mind all of the fears being enchantments because they are manifestations of people's minds.
Well, hello. So just very quickly, because I think we're going a little bit long, but this does tie into. We had one of our regular listeners talk about this on socials. Artemi, hello Artemi.
Hello.
they said, I was talking to them about horrors and nightmares, and they said, I want to know why fear of missing out and other nightmares aren't incarnations. Aren't they the same thing as grief or anger? They're creatures based off emotions.
I think it would be a betrayal for the incarnations of natural planes to have a simulacrum within that. I don't feel he's powerful enough to actually create an incarnation. I feel like his horrors are as close as he can get to an incarnation, because he himself isn't pure enough to actually create an incarnation. He can only see the fear and manifest it rather than have natural things occur. Like, even all the overlords are like, they're part house, part creature, because they are just him going, I can't deal with all of this. I need you to govern this sector, because he isn't pure enough to... There's none of the world left to incarnate.
Yeah.
It's all a facsimile. It's all him processing and regurgitating.
I suppose from a gameplay, you could have really played on that idea. But I do like, as you say, the idea that the human spirit still... Or, sorry, not human spirit. I don't want to be typist. Against any centaurs or, snake folk.
Though we very rarely see non-human spirits.
Well,
they're usually
also
just
most, not all, but most of the creatures in there are either elves or humans, aren't they? In Duskmourn? Anyway, my point is, like, the kind of inner spirit of things, the inner emotions, he can't quite get at.
He can't comprehend, yeah.
So, great question.
Yeah.
Magic, that's why.
I would like to go back to Duskmourn and see us at a point of where the plane has started to dissolve because he doesn't need it to be a plane anymore, and it's just him as a being that has this eldritch, like, world within him. It's almost like he is, like the story of the week of where we went to Valgavoth, and then you go within him. Like, he's a moving thing. The plane itself is then not distilled, but essentially absorbed completely to the point of where he doesn't need to keep manifesting
he's just
it.
part of the Blind Eternity.
Yeah, he doesn't need that to be a thing anymore, because he can now consume from outside. He doesn't need to maintain the inside. Let's see. Good though.
Yeah.
Right?
Let us know on Twitter @MTFlavouring what you think about Duskmourn. I think we've slightly moved on in the chat from Duskmourn, but guess what? It is still the set that people are playing right now.
It still has only released like a week and a half, 2 weeks ago. Like, people will be playing this for a fair while. We haven't got spoilers for the next set. Khan's the thing is the thing that's happening that no one's talking about, thankfully.
Yeah, I kind of like it.
Thank God. It's for the first time we're getting to a point where we've done both episodes, both the story and the flavour picks, and there isn't already a bunch of cards for the next set out.
Love it. If I edit this and get it out tomorrow, we'll see if that's the same.
Yeah, see if it's still true. Because it doesn't feel like there's anything on the horizon, which for the first time in a long time, it hasn't felt like that. It's always been next. And it's now gone...
Loading Ready Runs podcast, Tap Concede, they released the episode for EDH. Just had a bunch of bands the same day that there was the announcement for all the other shit that went on, and they put a disclaimer at the start of the episode that was like, yes, we know.
Yeah, no shit.
And then they had to talk about the bands as if everything else hadn't happened.
People can't fucking react in real time,
It's
like
tough.
there is production value to some people's content, not necessarily ours.
Oh, yeah. It's just laziness on the part of me for not getting out on time. Emails go to mtflavouring, that's with an O-U-R, at gmail.com. My personal Twitter is @AndyManface. Nathan's, yours is...
At the Fox in the Moon.
Please tell a friend about this podcast. That's how we get new listeners.
I hate everything about that.
I was workshopping the theme tune.
We'll get to write the theme tune, sing the theme tune. We'll get there.
We'll get there. And yeah, let us know anything. Let us know everything.
Talk to us, please.
Tell us a secret.
We're desperate.
Online, in front of everybody. Thank you so much for listening. This has been Magic the Flavour.
We'll see you soon.